Lena had always believed that life would eventually open a door for her. But for many years, every door she reached seemed to stay closed. She lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, and everyone knew the limits of that place. People rarely left, and even when they dreamed of something bigger, those dreams usually stayed locked inside their hearts. But Lena was different. She felt something inside her that pushed her to imagine a world beyond the familiar roads and old buildings she grew up around. Her parents had passed away when she was young, and she had been raised by her aunt, a kind but busy woman who worked long hours. Lena learned how to be independent early in life. She worked small jobs, took care of herself, and tried to stay hopeful, but she often felt lonely, not in a painful way, but in a quiet way that made her wish for someone to talk to, someone who understood her thoughts and feelings. One day, while reading a magazine that someone had left behind in the shop where she worked, she came across a small advertisement. It mentioned a mail-order service for people searching for companionship. It wasn't something she had ever imagined for herself, but she kept thinking about it. The idea of writing letters to someone far away, someone who might understand her, felt strangely comforting. After a week of thinking about it, she finally sent a letter. She didn't expect much from it. It was simply a step she took, because she didn't want her life to stay stuck. Weeks later, she received a reply. The letter was from a man named Thomas. His handwriting was neat, his words gentle, and he wrote in a way that made her feel safe. He lived in a distant city, much larger than her small town. He told her about his daily life, his work, the places he liked to visit, and the dreams he still held on to, even as an adult. He seemed thoughtful, and he asked her questions that no one had asked her before. He wanted to know what made her happy, what she wished for, what she feared, and what kind of life she imagined for herself. She felt seen. Maybe for the first time in years, their letters continued for months. Each envelope brought warmth into her small life. She started waking up in the morning with a new kind of hope, one that made her feel lighter. She noticed colors she had ignored before: the deep blue of the sky, the soft yellow of sunlight on her window. Even her routine felt brighter, just because she knew she might find a letter waiting for her at the post office. Eventually, Thomas began to talk about meeting her. He explained that he lived alone in a small house in the city, and that he had always wanted a partner who understood him. He told her she didn't need to feel pressure. He simply hoped she would think about visiting. Lena spent days thinking about it, reading his letters again and again. He seemed honest, gentle, and sincere. More importantly, he made her believe that she deserved a life where she wasn't alone. At last, she made the decision. She wrote to him that she was ready to visit and see where life would take them. When she sealed the letter, her hands shook a little. But it wasn't fear. It was excitement. She felt like she was stepping into a story she had only imagined. The day of her journey arrived. Lena packed her small suitcase with care. She took only a few clothes, her aunt's scarf, and the bundle of letters she had received from Thomas. The letters felt like a piece of her heart. She couldn't leave them behind. Her aunt hugged her tightly, wishing her happiness. Lena felt tears in her eyes. But they weren't sad tears. They were the kind of tears that come when life finally begins to move forward. She boarded the train with a quiet smile. The train whistle sounded, and soon her small town disappeared behind her. As she sat by the window, she watched fields, trees, and distant houses pass by. Everything felt new, even though she had seen these kinds of scenes before. But this time, the world looked different, because she was different. She was someone who had made a bold decision for her future. The train journey was long, but Lena didn't mind. She liked the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. She held the last letter Thomas had sent her. In that letter, he had described exactly where he would meet her at the station. "I will be standing near the big clock," he had written. "I'll be holding a small sign with your name so you can find me easily. I'll be wearing a brown jacket." She imagined the moment over and over, the moment she would step off the train and see him for the first time. During the journey, Lena thought about her life and how far she had come. She remembered days when she felt stuck, and nights when she felt invisible. Now, she was traveling toward someone she believed cared for her. She wondered what Thomas's voice would sound like, what his smile would be like, and whether he would recognize her right away. The train finally entered the city. The buildings rose high, the roads were wide, and everything felt louder and busier than she had imagined. She felt her heartbeat quicken, not because she was afraid but because she was stepping into a world completely different from her own. When the train slowed down and stopped, she took a deep breath. She smoothed her dress, picked up her suitcase, and stepped onto the platform. The station was filled with people, families greeting each other, travelers rushing to catch their trains, and workers moving quickly along the platform. She stood still for a moment, taking it all in. Then she looked for the big clock. She saw it near the center of the station. She began walking toward it, her heart full of hope. She imagined Thomas standing there in his brown jacket, holding a sign with her name. She kept searching for a familiar face, though she had never seen him before. But when she reached the clock, she didn't see anyone who matched the description. Instead, she saw a man she didn't recognize. He was holding a small board with her name written neatly on it. He didn't look anything like Thomas had described. He wasn't wearing a brown jacket. He wasn't tall like Thomas had mentioned in his letters, and his expression was tense, as if he wasn't sure what to expect. Lena stopped a few steps away from him. Her heart began to beat harder, but not in the way she had imagined. She felt a flicker of confusion. The man noticed her and gave a small nod, almost as if he had been waiting for her. "Are you Lena?" he asked politely. She nodded slowly, still unsure. "My name is Michael," he said. "I'm here to take you." Those words didn't match anything Thomas had told her. Lena felt a gentle wave of worry, but she stayed calm. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. She took a small breath and tried to understand what was happening. She asked him about Thomas, hoping for a simple explanation. Michael hesitated. In that moment, Lena realized that her new journey might not be as simple as she hoped. Something unexpected was waiting for her, a truth she had not prepared for. Yet she stood there quietly, holding her suitcase and Thomas's last letter, still hoping that everything would make sense soon. Lena stood in front of the stranger, trying to understand the situation. The noise of the busy station surrounded them, people talking, luggage rolling, announcements echoing, but her attention stayed fixed on the man holding the sign with her name. She had imagined many versions of her first meeting with Thomas, but none of those imagined moments included a stranger standing in his place. Michael looked slightly nervous, as if he wasn't used to approaching people like this. His clothes were simple, his eyes calm but filled with something she couldn't read yet. Lena felt unsure but kept her posture gentle and polite. She had traveled so far, and she didn't want her first impression of the city to be fear or panic. She offered a small, hesitant smile and said, "I was expecting someone else." Michael nodded slowly, as if he had prepared himself for that reaction. "I know," he replied quietly. "Thomas, he couldn't come." Lena waited for him to continue, but he didn't say anything else immediately. Instead, he glanced around the station, maybe checking if anyone was listening or watching. His behavior made her more confused than worried. He wasn't acting strange in a frightening way, just in a way that suggested he was uncomfortable or unsure how to explain things. She held her suitcase a little tighter and asked softly, "Is he all right?" Michael opened his mouth to answer but then paused again, as if searching for the right words. That pause made Lena's heart tighten with concern. She wanted clarity. She wanted reassurance. She wanted someone to tell her that everything she hoped for wasn't falling apart before it even began. "He's not able to meet you today," Michael finally said. His tone was gentle but unclear. Lena felt a mix of emotions, confusion, disappointment, and a quiet sadness she tried hard to hide. She had traveled so far with the belief that Thomas would be the one greeting her. She imagined his friendly smile, his warm welcome, the way he would recognize her kindness even before she spoke. Instead, she faced uncertainty. She looked around once more, scanning the station carefully. Maybe Thomas was just late. Maybe he had sent Michael temporarily. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding that would become clear soon. She hoped for that. "Did he send you?" she asked, her voice steady but soft. Michael nodded. Yes. He asked me to come for you. His eyes lowered briefly, as if he didn't feel completely confident saying it. Something didn't feel right, but Lena didn't want to assume anything negative. She reminded herself that she was new to the city. She didn't know how things worked here. Maybe people often got help from others to pick up guests. Maybe Thomas genuinely had a reason he couldn't explain through letters. You must be tired from the long journey, Michael said after a moment. I can take your bag if you want. Lena politely shook her head. I can carry it, she replied. She wasn't afraid, but she felt safer keeping her belongings close until she understood the situation better. Michael didn't insist. He simply stepped a little aside, giving her space to walk beside him instead of behind him. This small gesture helped her feel slightly more comfortable. People who wished to hide something usually behaved differently, she thought. They rushed, or they pressured, or they avoided eye contact. Michael was not doing any of that in a worrying way. He simply looked nervous, maybe unsure of himself. They walked out of the station together. The city outside was lively, filled with tall buildings, busy roads, and people moving with purpose. Lena breathed in deeply, letting the cool air touch her face. Everything felt fast and unfamiliar, but it also felt full of possibilities. She hoped that whatever confusion she felt now would soon fade. As they walked toward the street, she tried to talk gently. How do you know Thomas? Michael hesitated again. We know each other for some time, he said. I helped him with a few things recently. Michael hesitated again. I helped him with a few things recently. He spoke honestly enough, but his answers were short, as if he didn't want to say too much too quickly. Lena wondered if Thomas was ill, or if something unexpected had happened in his life that he couldn't talk about. She hoped nothing serious had happened to him. They reached a quiet section outside the main entrance of the station. Cars were lined up there. People were getting in and out, and the city's noise felt like a large wave gently pressing against them. Michael pointed to a small car parked near the sidewalk. This way, he said. Before stepping closer to the car, Lena stopped. She turned to him, holding her suitcase firmly. Before we go anywhere, she said softly, I need to understand. Why didn't Thomas come? He told me he would be here. Her voice wasn't angry. She wasn't demanding answers. She was simply asking the question any person in her position would ask. Michael looked down for a moment, then lifted his eyes toward her. She noticed something almost sad in them, like he was carrying a weight he didn't know how to put down. It's complicated, he whispered. I will explain everything. Just, please trust me for a little while. Lena felt a gentle ache in her chest. She didn't know him, but something about his expression told her he wasn't trying to deceive her. He was trying to protect her from something, though she didn't know what yet. She took a slow breath and gave a small nod. She didn't completely understand the situation, but she didn't sense danger. Instead, she sensed a kind of heaviness in his words, like the truth he carried wasn't easy to speak aloud. As they drove through the city, Lena kept looking out of the window. She watched the tall buildings, the wide roads, the lights, the shops, and the people who were living their everyday lives. Everything seemed new and overwhelming. She wondered how different her life might become if she stayed here. Michael drove carefully, keeping his eyes on the road. He wasn't talkative, but he wasn't unfriendly either. The silence in the car wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply waiting for the right moment to break. Finally, Lena asked again, her tone gentle. Is Thomas all right? Michael's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. He looked troubled, as if he knew the answer would change everything. He hasn't been well, he said slowly. Things happened recently. Things he couldn't write about. Lena felt her heart squeeze. Why didn't he tell me? Michael glanced at her briefly. He didn't want to worry you. Those words felt both comforting and confusing. Thomas had always been honest in his letters, open about his feelings and thoughts. Why would he suddenly hide something from her? The more she thought about it, the more questions filled her mind. But she couldn't bring herself to push too hard. She sensed that the truth wasn't something that could be shared casually. They continued driving through quieter streets now. Michael eventually spoke with a softer tone. "I know this isn't what you expected. And I'm sorry. You traveled a long way. You must feel confused." Lena looked at him. "I just want to understand. That's all. And you will," he promised. "I just need a little time to explain everything properly." Lena nodded slowly. She didn't know whether to feel worried or hopeful. The city around her felt like a new world, beautiful but overwhelming. And the man driving beside her felt like someone holding a secret, one that might change the entire direction of her life. As they reached a quiet neighborhood, Michael parked the car near a peaceful street lined with trees. He turned off the engine but didn't open the door immediately. Instead, he sat quietly, gathering his thoughts. Lena waited patiently, her hands resting on her bag. He finally looked at her, his expression gentle but serious. "There's something you need to know," he said softly. Something about Thomas. Her heart beat a little faster, but she kept her breath steady. Michael took a slow breath, as if preparing himself, and Lena realized that whatever he was about to reveal would change everything she had imagined. The journey she thought would bring her closer to Thomas was turning into something entirely different, something unexpected, something she had never planned for. But she listened quietly, ready to hear the truth she had traveled so far to find. Michael sat still for a moment, as if choosing each word carefully before he spoke. Lena waited quietly, her hands resting on her lap, her heart gently beating with worry and curiosity. She had traveled across cities with hope, and now she sat in a stranger's car, waiting for news she didn't understand. The street outside was peaceful, but inside the car, everything felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Michael finally spoke. His voice was soft and steady. "Lena, Thomas wasn't able to come because something happened. Something unexpected." Her fingers tightened slightly around the handle of her bag, but she didn't interrupt. She simply nodded for him to continue. Michael looked ahead, avoiding her eyes for a moment. "A few weeks ago, he had an accident, and he didn't recover." Lena's breath stopped for a moment. She didn't fully understand the meaning at first. The words felt distant, unreal. Her mind tried to separate each sentence, but they blended together like a soft echo she couldn't catch. She whispered, He isn't here anymore?" Michael slowly nodded. "I'm so sorry." The world felt still for a long moment. Not silent, she could still hear faint sounds outside, but still, as if everything inside her paused. She had never met Thomas in person. Yet she felt a deep connection with him through the letters they exchanged. His words had been warm, hopeful, caring. They had filled her lonely days with light. And now, suddenly, that light felt dim. Her eyes dropped to the bundle of letters in her bag. She remembered all the evenings she spent reading his words, imagining a future where she wouldn't be alone anymore. She took a slow breath, not wanting to cry, not wanting to break down in front of someone she barely knew. She didn't even know how to react. Should she be sad, shocked, or numb? She felt all three at once. Michael looked at her with gentle concern. "I know this is a lot. I didn't want to tell you like this, but I didn't know another way." Lena nodded slowly. She appreciated his honesty, even if the truth hurt. She stared out of the window, watching the leaves moving softly in the breeze. She felt a mix of emotions: grief for the person she never met, sorrow for the letters she would no longer receive, and confusion about everything she thought she knew. After a few minutes, she gathered herself enough to speak. How did you know him? You said you helped him?" Michael leaned back slightly, his shoulders relaxing in a tired way. "I was helping his family with some work. They live outside the city. When Thomas passed away, I helped them pack his things. That's when I found your letters. They were kept neatly in a small wooden box. He had saved every one of them." Lena felt a soft ache in her chest. The thought of Thomas keeping her letters carefully felt bittersweet. Michael continued. "His family didn't know what to do about you. They weren't sure how to contact you or whether they should tell you. But I I felt like you deserved to know the truth. I couldn't let you come all the way here and find no one waiting for you." Lena looked at him, noticing the sincerity in his expression. He wasn't saying these things to gain her trust. He truly felt responsible. She whispered, "Why didn't you tell me before I came?" Michael lowered his eyes. "I tried to write to you. I started the letter many times, but each time, I felt like the words were wrong. I didn't know how to tell you something so serious through a piece of paper. I was afraid you'd misunderstand, or think someone was playing a cruel trick." He paused, then added, "And I didn't want you to feel alone. I thought if I met you personally, I could explain everything better." Lena absorbed his words carefully. She didn't feel angry at him. She felt more confused than anything. His actions weren't perfect, but they weren't unkind. He was simply a person trying to do something right in a difficult situation. She took a deep breath. "You said you found my letters. Did he ever talk about me?" Michael gave a small, sad smile. "He talked about how your letters made his days brighter. He said you were kind, thoughtful, and honest. He said he was grateful to have met you through those letters. I think he truly cared." Those words touched her heart gently. Even though she had never seen him in person, their bond through letters had been real. She felt tears gather in her eyes, but she kept her composure. Blinking slowly to clear them, she asked in a trembling voice, "Why? Why did you bring me here? Why not just send a message?" Michael looked at her with a softer gaze than before. "Because when I read your letters, I could see how much hope you had. You weren't just visiting someone, you were searching for a new beginning. I didn't want to take that away from you over a written message. I wanted to be here to tell you everything in person, so you wouldn't feel abandoned." His words were unexpected but sincere. Lena sat quietly, thinking. She didn't know what the next steps in her life would be. She had planned everything around meeting Thomas. And now, everything felt different. The future she imagined didn't exist anymore, but she still felt grateful that she now knew the truth instead of waiting endlessly or feeling rejected. After a while, the silence grew heavy again. Lena felt she needed air. The weight of the news was too much to carry inside the small space of the car. She gently opened the door and stepped outside. The fresh air touched her face, calming her racing heart. She hugged her arms around herself, not for warmth but for comfort. She stood near a tree, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the breeze steady her thoughts. Michael stepped out too, but he stayed a few steps away, giving her space. He didn't rush her or ask her to speak. He seemed to understand that she needed a quiet moment. After a few minutes, she turned to him. Her voice was soft but steadier now. "Thank you for telling me." Michael nodded. "You don't have to decide anything right now. If you want, I can take you somewhere safe to rest for a while. Or I can take you back to the station. Whatever you need." Lena appreciated the gentle respect he gave her. He wasn't pressuring her. He was offering options with kindness. She didn't know what to choose yet. She didn't want to return immediately, but she also didn't know if she should stay. She looked around again. This city, so full of life and possibility, was nothing like the quiet town she came from. And even though her purpose for coming here had changed, something inside her whispered that maybe she was still meant to be here for a reason she didn't understand yet. She looked at Michael carefully. "I need some time to think," she said. "Of course," he replied softly. She returned to the car, sat down slowly, and held the bundle of letters close to her chest. She felt a gentle sadness, but also a quiet strength inside her. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but she wasn't lost. She just needed time. Michael started the engine again, driving slowly, respectfully, giving her the quiet space she needed. As they moved through the peaceful streets, Lena stared out of the window once more, this time not searching, not hoping, but simply trying to understand her new path. She didn't know what the next part of her journey would look like, but she knew one thing clearly. The truth had changed everything, and now she had to decide what to do with it. The car moved slowly along the quiet street. As Lena watched the trees passing by, her thoughts were soft but heavy. She felt like she was floating between two worlds, the world she left behind and the world she had just stepped into. Nothing was familiar, yet nothing felt frightening. She took slow breaths, trying to organize her feelings, but everything inside her still felt like a gentle storm. Michael glanced at her once in a while, not to pressure her, but to make sure she was all right. His silence wasn't cold. It was respectful. He seemed to understand that she needed space more than anything else. Lena held the bundle of letters from Thomas tightly, as if holding them allowed her to carry the memory of him with strength instead of sorrow. After a long, quiet moment, Michael spoke softly. "There's a small guest house nearby. It's simple but comfortable. If you want, I can take you there. You can rest and think without any pressure." Lena hesitated. She didn't want to return home immediately. She felt she owed herself a moment to breathe, to understand her own heart. "Yes," she finally said. "Maybe a place to rest would help." Michael nodded gently and turned the car toward a peaceful neighborhood. The streets were lined with small houses, flowers in their front yards, and bicycles parked neatly near gates. It looked like the kind of place where people lived quiet lives with simple routines. The guest house stood at the corner of the street. It had soft yellow walls, a small garden, and a wooden sign hanging near the entrance. It looked inviting in a calm, humble way. When the car stopped, Lena stepped out, feeling the lightness of the cool evening breeze on her face. "I'll go inside with you," Michael said softly, "just to help you check in. After that, I won't disturb you, unless you need something." Lena appreciated that. She followed him inside, where a warm, friendly woman welcomed them at the reception desk. Michael explained politely that Lena had traveled a long way and needed a place to rest. The woman nodded, gave Lena a gentle smile, and handed her a key to a small room upstairs. Once everything was settled, Michael walked her to the staircase. He didn't go any further, respecting her privacy. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "you can call me. But only if you want to. I don't want you to feel pressured in any way." Lena looked at him carefully. She saw honesty in his expression, no expectations, no hidden intentions, just simple concern. She gave a small nod. "Thank you. For everything." Michael offered a faint smile. "Take your time." With that, he walked out quietly, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Lena climbed the stairs slowly, carrying her bag in one hand and Thomas's letters in the other. Her room was small but warm. A soft bed, a little window facing the garden, and a wooden chair near a writing table created a peaceful atmosphere. She placed her suitcase on the floor, sat on the bed, and let out a long breath she had been holding for hours. The silence of the room wrapped around her like a blanket. It felt comforting after such a long, exhausting day. She looked at the bundle of letters again. She opened the top one, the first letter Thomas ever wrote to her. His handwriting brought back memories of her excitement, her hopes, and her belief that two people could build something special, even through words. Reading his gentle sentences, she didn't feel broken. She felt grateful. She felt thankful that even though their connection had been short, it had been meaningful. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Thomas," as if he could somehow hear her gratitude through the quiet walls. Hours passed as she read letter after letter. Each one reminded her of the kindness he had shown, the warmth in his words, and the sincerity she felt from him. She didn't cry anymore. She simply let herself feel everything calmly. When she finally placed the letters back on the table, she noticed the sky turning orange from the setting sun. A gentle glow filled her room. For the first time since arriving in the city, she felt a sense of peace. She didn't know exactly what her next step would be, but she knew she wanted to continue forward, not run away. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it slightly and saw the woman from the front desk holding a tray with warm tea. "I thought you might need this," the woman said kindly. Lena smiled gratefully and took the tray. "Thank you. That's very kind." The woman hesitated before speaking again. The young man who brought you here. He waited outside for a long time. He left only when he saw that you were settled. Lena's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise. She didn't expect that. The woman continued gently. He seems like a thoughtful person. Lena nodded slowly, thinking about Michael's calm manner and quiet patience. Yes, she whispered. He is. After drinking the tea, Lena sat by the window, watching the evening settle into night. She thought about everything that had happened. She thought about Thomas, about her long journey, and about Michael, who had stepped into her story unexpectedly. She wondered if life sometimes brings people together in ways we don't understand at first. Maybe meeting Michael wasn't an accident. Maybe there was a reason behind all of this. Suddenly, she felt a quiet urge to step outside for fresh air. She put on her scarf, wrapped Thomas's letters gently with a ribbon, placed them in her bag, and walked downstairs. The garden outside the guest house was peaceful. Lamps glowed softly along the walkway. She sat on a small bench beneath a tree, breathing in the night air. After a few minutes, she heard footsteps approaching slowly. She turned and saw Michael standing near the gate. He wasn't too close, he was careful not to intrude. He lifted his hand slightly in a polite gesture. I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk, he said softly. But I came to check if you're okay. If not, I can leave. Lena gazed at him for a moment. She felt no discomfort. Instead, she felt a quiet calm around him. You can sit, she said gently, pointing to the bench. Michael sat down with respectful distance between them. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. Finally, Lena asked, "Why did you come back?" Michael took a slow breath. Because I didn't want you to feel alone in a new place. Even if you don't need help, I wanted you to know someone is nearby if you do. His words were simple, but they touched her heart. She had spent so many years feeling alone. And even now, after such unexpected sadness, she didn't feel abandoned. She looked at him with soft eyes. Thank you. I don't know what I'll do next. Everything is so different now. Michael nodded. You don't have to decide right away. Sometimes, life changes our plans so it can give us something better, even if we don't see it yet. Lena listened quietly, thinking about his gentle words. Did you know Thomas well? She asked. Michael smiled faintly. Not deeply, but from what I saw, and from reading your letters, he cared about you a lot. And I think he would want you to be happy. The night breeze danced around them, cool and soft. Lena whispered, I want to honor his memory, but I also need to move forward. Michael nodded. And you will, at your own pace. They sat quietly again, watching the sky darken and the stars appear one by one. Something inside Lena felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because she wasn't facing it alone anymore. She had found someone unexpectedly kind, someone who didn't replace Thomas, but who helped her carry the truth gently. After a while, she stood up. Michael stood up too. She looked at him and said softly, Thank you for being here. He gave her a warm, comforting smile. I'm here if you need anything. Just let me know. As she walked back to her room, she realized something important. Life has a strange way of bringing people into our journey, not always the ones we expect, but sometimes the ones we truly need. Her story had taken a different path from what she imagined. But the path ahead didn't feel empty. It felt open, waiting for new steps, new hope, and maybe even new beginnings. And that night, for the first time in a long time, Lena slept with a peaceful heart, knowing that her journey was far from over. Only now, she was ready for whatever came next.